Stick to the script.
Ready? Take 3. Welcome to an Intentional Marriage Podcast. We are Chad and Kristen Cottingham, and we are so glad you joined us here today.
Yes, because you know why? We know great marriages don't just happen. You have to be intentional. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk all things marriage.
All things marriage. And speaking of all things marriage, our topic today, Kristen, is a fun one. I think one of my favorite things to discuss.
Yes.
What is it called, Kristen?
We titled this, My Spouse is Not a Mind Reader.
My spouse is not a mind reader.
Or I didn't know I had to be a mind reader when I got married. I mean...
Yes. And I love the title of this. I think of so many stories, and we're just going to jump right into some stories and opportunities as I get that started here. I think, Kristen, of mind reading. I think so often, I think when we got married, I thought you were going to think like me, and you're naturally I'm going to think like you. I think our expectations were off, like, oh, we get married, we come one, our thoughts are, we can read each other's minds.
Yes.
No. So let me give you an example. We had four kids, they're all grown now, but when they were little, of course, the nighttime routine for you parents is very hard.
Yes. It's
very busy.
exhausting.
You got jammies, you got tubs, they're delaying, they're stalling, they fix it.
I need a drink. I need this. And
Get to bed.
Just go to bed.
So we would take turns. We wouldn't do it together. We took turns.
Yes.
Hey, you took the kids at night. I did it last night. Because depending on the day,
yeah,
I'm
in the
tired, you're
mood,
tired.
I can't see one tiny little face past 8 o'clock.
So, and I was really good at nighttime telling stories. I love telling stories. Kristen was really good reading to them. Whoever tucked them in, we try and say our bedtime prayers and talk like that. But Kristen would say, hey, will you tuck the kids in tonight? And I, oh yeah, I'd love to. I go up and I tell them stories. I get them tucked into bed and I come down and she's like, well, how was it? I said, great. They're going to bed. She said, oh, well, well, what? And she looked at me like, didn't you pick up anything? I'm like, you didn't tell me to pick up. You told me to tuck in the kids. Well, you should have picked up all the plates and the cups. And I know there's always clothes and the towels from swimming. Why didn't you pick those up and bring them down? And my eyes, I just, wait a minute. I did just what you asked. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, we'd have this fight because I couldn't read her mind. Because when Kristen would tuck in the kids, what would you do?
Well, I would go, tuck them in, tell them a story, do the bedtime prayer thing. But then on my way out, yes, I would hang up the bathroom towels. I would put the toys back on the shelf. I would, grab the sippy cups or whatever that was, that belonged downstairs. So I would tidy up on my way out, and Chad would just step over it all. And I'm thinking, I got to pick it all up the next day. And why can't you help me? And why don't you see it like I see it? And so basically this whole conversation that we want to have today centers around expectations, because we think our spouse we expect them to do it how we would do it. And if we're not...
And read our minds.
Yes, why don't you think like me? Why can't you do it like me? This is how I think. You should do it how I do it. And so really, expectations are assumptions about what our spouse should do or what our marriage should look like.
Ooh,
and I think there's two key words in that definition. One is assumptions. We assume that, like we just said, you're going to do it how I do it. You're going to think how I think. And then should. Should is that trap word because we attach... we kind of attach our happiness to it.
Yes.
We attach our happiness to the expectations because if this doesn't happen, then I'm going to be disappointed. Or there's going to be some sort of fallout, a consequence. And so that's the biggest problem with expectations. We attach our happiness. It's not like, okay, if it happens, it's great. If it doesn't, oh well. No, it's like with an expectation, you better do this.
Kristen, and that makes me think of another story because I feel like I'm the one here that I was trying to read your mind through most of our marriage because I would think of another story. Oh. I remember, Kristen, you'd call me, you're on the way home and say, hey, I invited your mom and dad over, or I invited some friends over to the house. Will you pick up real quick?
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, okay, I'll pick up the house real quick. And I got my nachos and my chips, and I quick put them away, and I quick just wiped the chips off the counter right there, and I picked up. And I thought it looked great. And Kristen would come home. She goes, okay, they're going to be here in like 5 minutes. And she walked in the door. What did you do? I thought you picked up. I said, I did. You said the pillows are, why didn't you fluff the pillows? Fold the blankets. You could have vacuumed. The dishwasher's still full. There's stuff in the sink. What are you doing? I didn't know. You just said pick up, and I just thought I was picking up how I would pick up, and I didn't get it, and now we're in another fight, and now she's mad at me, and here come our guests, and we're trying to make smile, and we're so happy, and yet we want to claw each other's eyes out because we just were like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I couldn't read your mind.
Right.
You assumed picking up was exactly how you would pick up.
Yes.
And we see these situations different, whether it's tucking in our kids, picking up, and so it just became so clear to us, we have to clearly communicate those expectations. Because when it's unspoken, when she just said pick up, she thought she spoke it. I didn't think
That
anything.
I clearly, identified what I needed.
Right. When she said tuck the kids in, I did exactly what she asked. So we are on two different things. And different doesn't mean bad.
Right.
We just see things different. So hence the need to clearly communicate
yes.
our expectations, because I'm going to share the thing, because I think as a man, as a husband, I want to please. I want to serve. I want to do whatever you say. You ask me to put the dish away, I want to do that. I want to help you. But when these big, vague terms, I don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
And so I get confused, and therefore it creates challenges and sometimes conflict.
Well, in unspoken unspoken expectations just leaves the door wide open for misunderstandings, for conflict, for disappointment, for frustration, for resentment. If you're not clearly communicating your needs and expectations, that's what you're just setting yourself up for failure, basically.
Yeah.
And so we like to say you are 100% responsible to communicate your needs and feelings because my spouse is not a mind reader.
Yes. That's
So
good, Kristen.
I had to learn to be specific. I had to learn to say, okay, what is it that I want the outcome to be? Like, okay, will you please hang up the wet towels from the bath, when you tuck the kids. So tuck the kids.
Okay.
Tucking in the kids means also hanging up the wet towels and bringing down any cups or sippy cups or whatever down into the kitchen. Okay, guess what? That's clear. You understood. You did it, and okay, we're all happy, right?
It seems so simple, because I know you didn't think, I shouldn't have to make a list. I shouldn't have to be specific. And we get a lot of couples we talk to, and I hear, well, he should know me by now. Mm-hmm. He should know what I like.
Yeah.
He should know what I mean. And that is really wrong, because again, there's that assumption.
Yes.
He should know me. I assume he's going to do it how I do it.
Right.
And that's where couples get in problems.
Well, and because things change on the daily. What I want one day is different than what I may want the next day. And one day it may bug me, and the next day it might not bug me.
And anybody married to a wife knows that's a true statement. It could change daily, hourly.
Yes.
Whoa. So be clear on what you need, because that is so right. What you wanted today is not the same as yesterday.
Exactly.
Guys are pretty easy, though. We usually want just a few things.
Yes. Which brings up another expectations.
So I'm not the only one that needs to mind read. At times I assume you do as well.
Right.
You want to share one of those?
Well, as we were talking about, this episode, I think one expectation you have that you think I should be aware of is when it comes to sex. Here's another thing. When it comes to your expectations, you can't just drop hints, clues, maybe even like body language.
So should I just come right out and say, let's go have sex?
You know what? That kind of would be better, I think, rather than.
Or I'm hoping for something tonight. Or it's been a while, or what.
Well, not even so much it's been a while, because, wondering if, okay, does that mean today? Does that mean tomorrow? What does that mean? I think it's better to just clearly communicate and just say, hey, you know what? I would like to, have sex tonight, or I would like to, be close to you tonight. It's been a while since we've connected in that way, and I am really missing you. And that way it kind of makes my mind aware, like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe this is an area that has been neglected, or, or you're just communicating what you want rather than dancing around the issue or dropping hints or being passive aggressive and saying, wow,
Grumpy.
being grumpy or whatever. So it doesn't matter the topic. It's basically an expectation is around an unmet need or a desire. And if we're not clearly communicating this need or desire, like I said, the longer it goes unmet, the more frustration, the more disappointment, and less enjoyment in your marriage. So, yeah. And I think around the topic of expectations too, there's different types of expectations. We talked about some in the first episode that, some are just unrealistic.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to get married and my spouse is going to complete
I'm
me
your knight in
and
shining
make me
armor.
happy. That's just an unrealistic expectation that's going to just lead you to a long-term chronic state of disappointment. And there's unrealistic, but yes, unspoken expectations, I think, are, the big doozies, because how do you know? You can't fix something if you don't know what they are.
Exactly, because I truly think both spouses in marriage truly want to serve, truly want to love, but we fail to communicate. We fail to state what we need, what we're thinking. And again, that assumption, it gets in the way, or they should. Yeah. Man, more fights and more conflict have started over this lack of communication over little things than anything. But Kristen, I think there's something that gets in the way as well. I think there are times where maybe the wife does clearly communicate, or she's asking, and the guy puts it off or doesn't do it, or vice versa. Or maybe the wife asks, but she begins nagging over and over. So there are some extremes.
Right.
We want to stay away from being a naggy wife or being a husband that I'm not serving, I'm not doing the things, or vice versa. We both have to serve and love each other in doing and helping, whether it's household chores.
Well, and it's not like a behavior modification tactic. You know what I mean? Like, you have to do this and then I'll be happy. It's not, you're not doing these things to avoid a blow up, avoid me not being happy. Love is a process of meeting each other's needs. We genuinely want to meet each other's needs out of love and care and concern for the other person. It's not just, oh, I just want to make you happy. I want to keep you under wraps. I don't want you to, go off and complain to your girlfriends or, be miserable. So we have to be careful too and give our spouse grace if they're not meeting our expectations. So I think it's important to just communicate them, but also give grace in the process of, when the expectation is going to be met or fulfilled.
So Kristen, we gave some examples of places we were not good mind readers and didn't communicate. What are some tools that we've done or tried that have been successful to communicate clearly, to share these? Can you share with your audience that? Because sometimes it's easier said than done. But I can hear, my husband doesn't ever listen, or she's always nag. How do we get them to the point to communicate what they want? Or it's easier just do it myself.
That's a good point too. Well, I think with any conversation, timing is always critical. I'm not going to expect you to, or even ask for something during a Lions football game. You know what I mean? Like, there's a time for everything, and
like fix the washer during the Lions game, fourth quarter, 2 minutes to go.
Right. Like it's so like timing. Even bringing it to your attention could be some critical. I'm not going to ask you to do something if it's you're under a lot of stress or you're just physically tired. I think bringing up the topic at the right time is important.
Yeah, and I think too, Kristen, if you also preface it, hey, when the game is done, or
Yes.
hey, I know you're taking a break, you're relaxing. When you're done, would you get a chance to look at this?
Yes.
So it's also not putting pressure on me, and vice versa.
Right.
But let them know, hey, when you get a chance, could you take a look at this?
Yes.
When you have the opportunity, would you mind doing that for me? I think that approach is way better. Instead of, all you do is sit around and watch football. You never do anything around this house.
Oh, right.
Oh, I'm not going to do anything.
Which leads me not only to timing, but your tone. You know, when you're asking for
the big
something,
T's.
yeah, 2 T's, timing and tone. Like you just kind of said, well, you never do anything around here. Okay, that's an extreme statement, because always and never are words that are extreme. That's probably not true that you never do something. So, having, when it comes to, clearly communicating, timing is critical. Your tone is, something that you need to watch. And just being clear, and maybe explaining why, like why this is important to you. Because sometimes, like, you might not think it's a big deal that I'm asking you to do something, to you it's like, why does this matter? But it does. So if it matters to me, it ought to matter to you, or vice versa. Because that's just communicating love. Like, if it matters, I love you, and so I want to do this. And if it matters to you, it matters to me.
It is. And Kristen, those are huge, huge tips, that timing and that tone. I think so often we had some of our worst fights that started after 9 p.m.
Right.
We were both exhausted from a work day, from the kids, whatever it was. We couldn't talk about finances. We couldn't talk about kids. We couldn't talk about the issue, whatever it was. And we ended up being up late in the night and getting nothing done.
Right.
Because that timing wasn't good. So sometimes there's issues you need to discuss or talk about or clearly communicate. Maybe on a fresh night's sleep the next day. Hey, could we talk about sex? Could we talk about this tomorrow? We talk about my needs versus your needs.
Right.
Yeah, now's not the time.
Right.
Again, that tone is, man, that can just cut.
Right. You can be right but wrong at the top of your voice.
Yeah, the tone, the volume, all those things just really, really can tear at a marriage and the fiber. But I think, Kristen, I think back when I think it really sunk into me, and we share this story a lot about, I used to always, for the most part, I'd pick up, done with my shower, I'd throw my dirty underwear on the floor. Right. And Kristen would always ask me, would you please pick your underwear? Why don't you put it in the clothes basket? I always felt like she was nagging, pick it up. And so I would on occasion, begrudgingly, I would grab it and throw it. And you always are leaving your underwear on the floor. And finally, it clicked to me when Kristen, I think, clearly communicated the reason. Yes. She said, hey, Chad, she goes, you know what? When you leave that underwear on the floor, I feel like you're disrespecting me. I stopped in my trap. Because I've asked you, I have to spend extra time bending over. I've got a sore back, whatever it was. But all of a sudden, as she said, I feel like you're disrespecting me. Well, it was like I got hit in the head. Like,
yeah, I felt like I was a maid. I felt like I was just this housekeeper. Like, we weren't having shared responsibility. Like, that's just personal responsibility, as picking up after yourself, And so,
but she stated not just what she needed, but why behind it, and it really resonated with me. So sometimes some of these issues you guys might be having, you need to clarify the why.
Yes.
Why should I pick up the kids' room on my way? I'm talking about. She's got to leave for work in the morning. She doesn't have time to do it in the morning.
Right.
So she's asking, hey, I've got to run out quick in the morning. I said, I don't want to have to do it. Sometimes we have to add that why, but we also have to trust our spouse and what they're asking. In times, I need more clarity on why than maybe she does, but it's okay to ask on my part. Can you tell me why or what's going on? But again, that story of she said she felt disrespect said so much to me. And I try and do everything I can to pick up my underwear on a daily basis now, just because of that.
Right.
And I don't want to feel like I disrespected her or treated her poorly.
Right. And, another situation kind of popped into my mind as you were talking about how uncommunicated expectations can really be, I don't want to say detrimental, but I'll just share the situation of you coaching. And, like our expectations, they kind of come from different sources, what you saw growing up or just your own personality, your own likes, your dislikes, whatever. But, so when you became a basketball coach, a varsity basketball coach, I mean, sports were a huge part of your life growing up. I wasn't really, a sports girl. I mean, okay, I played softball and whatnot, but it wasn't like I was big team organized sports like you were. And you were, your dream was always to become a varsity basketball coach. And I had we had 3 little kids at the time. This was before like GPS. It was, I mean, yeah.
Like 6'2" and a baby or something.
Right. Yeah. The kids were little. And you had this expectation that I would come to games, every single one of your games, because that was important to you. Like, and you just assumed that, oh, Kristen's going to come to all these basketball games. Now,
bring the kids.
It's going to be a fun family night, and they're going to be there to support me.
I wasn't much help at a game, though.
No, and so I'm hauling these 3 little kids, and of course, basketball season is in the middle of winter. Yeah. Again, like we said, we had no GPS, and so I am trying to find, and I'm not very good with directions, and so
she's not very good with GPS directions,
exactly.
Let alone with a map.
Exactly.
Or turn here at the light, and then go up 2 other lights and go right. And
so here, I remember one night in specifically that I had just had it because, and the games didn't start till like 7:00 at night. So this means we were driving around, getting to a game at 7:00, but then I had little kids. I had to get home to bed. They're tired, blah, blah, blah. You get this picture. And I had just had it. Like after this one game, I got lost in a snowstorm, in a blizzard. I never made it to the game. I'm driving around for 2 hours trying to find the school. I said, screw it, turn around. I went home and I really became very resentful of basketball games and your coaching and your desire to, be a coach, because I was thinking, this is taking away family time. He is expecting me to be at all these games and I can't do it. So instead of me clearly communicating and saying, honey, it's just too hard to be at all these games with little kids. I'm just going to come to the home games that are on Friday nights where I don't have to get the kids up for school the next morning. We could have had a discussion about that. And instead, what I did is I just nagged and nagged and nagged, and I became negative about coaching. I became negative about going to the games. And, eventually you gave up coaching. And I will have to say that is one of my regrets that I have, that this is how expectations not communicated can go sideways and really make life-changing decisions.
Because it lasted over years.
Yes.
Instead of being just clearly communicated up front.
And you just had this expectation that, oh, Kristen's going to come to all my games and she's going to enjoy it and it's going to be fun. Not realizing it's work. The kids are tired. Yeah. So
really, really good point, Kristen, and a great story because, again, I assumed you'd be there. I
wanted to be there, but it just
it
was unrealistic to come to all these games.
And we didn't really talk about it. It was unspoken. Right. So as we're kind of wrapping up, we want you guys, again, just beware that you take away, don't assume.
But do ask.
Do ask. Because, again, your spouse is not that mind reader. And I want to share a Bible verse because we're thinking, what does God have to say about this? And we looked up Matthew 5:37 because in that verse it talks about let your yes be yes and your no be no.
Be clear. Don't be passive aggressive. Don't drop hints. Don't
subtle clues.
Subtle clues. Don't dance around the topic. Don't just come out and say it. This is what I need. Could you please, X, Y, and Z. And
it's made things so much better.
Yes.
So much better. And again, you're going to be seasons, things change. But when you can start communicating these little things, it's going to go so much better for the big things that do come up. Because you're used to communicating and sharing those feelings, those expectations. And no longer will they be unspoken expectations. You can be clearly asked or state your needs and wants.
Yes. So when it comes to expectations, don't assume, but do ask for what you need. And I think that's just a good intentional tip and tool because guess what, honey? great marriages don't just happen. You have to be intentional. So,
Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll see you next time.